Welcome in. Badgers getting ready for their trip out to Eugene, Oregon to take on the Ducks, the 6th-ranked Oregon Ducks. And we'll get to that game. We haven't really talked much about it. We've got plenty of other stuff to get to as well, including Jesse being able to stop by that pregame tailgate that had the 3 former Rose Bowl teams. So you're able to get there, get some of their opinions on what they've seen. I know Vitaly Pasetsky, the kicker on those last 2 teams, was what would you say? What he was
Honest?
angry, honest, didn't hold back on some of the things that he has seen, and I would never expect Vitaly to do that. That's just who he is, and we appreciate that from him. So you have a story up on Badger Connect, or is that right? Before I say that,
That is. I had a chance
Okay.
to talk to 4 of those guys in the tent before the game, including Vitaly, and get their thoughts on how they feel.
So that's up on Badger Connect. We're going to be talking about that as well. We're going to get into a few other things. We'll make our picks. And it's getting tight, Jesse. I don't know if you saw, I give you the picks. I didn't do that last week, and it showed. So I apologize about that. It's not like I had a ton of time to look at those picks either. I just did it right before we went on. But there's now only a game of separation. We're both under 500, but there's only a game of separation between the two. And I have been able to push off having to call PJ Flex Taylor at this point. So that is a positive for me. But we'll get into those picks as well coming up in a little bit. We will start, though, as we always do in our preview shows. What does success look like for Wisconsin as they head out to Oregon?
Not get blown out. I mean, I know that there's so much negativity surrounding the program and the way we talk about this team, but we're also trying to be honest and objective about what we're seeing and where is there any reason for belief. I look at this matchup and I think this might be the toughest challenge Wisconsin has had to date. And they already went and played at Alabama and just played the #1 team in the country. Oregon is doing so many things well. Obviously, the Ducks lost to Indiana, and I think that lights a match for them, or ignites a flame to say we don't want to do that again. What does success look like? They can't move the ball. They crossed midfield twice, I believe, against Ohio State. They haven't scored a touchdown in 31 drives, 11 quarters. And defensively, they've been better at stopping the run, certainly. Ohio State, Maryland, Alabama. The problem is they haven't been able to stop the pass. And I'm looking at this Oregon team going, they're #2 in the country in scoring offense. They have the #1 team in terms of yards per carry. So I'll be really interested to see how well Wisconsin is able to stop the run against this team. And then Oregon has a top 10 scoring defense. Wisconsin has played 2 other teams that rank in the top 10 in scoring defense, Iowa and Ohio State. And the Badgers scored, let me think, 0 points. So I just don't even know what success looks like, dude. I honestly don't. If anyone thinks Wisconsin's going to go in there and win, I'd like to have some of what you're having. Again, they every week have a chance to make me and everyone else eat crow, but where is there any reason for optimism based on what we've seen?
Well, let me give you one reason for optimism. Apparently, Vegas and some people are putting money on Wisconsin to cover because the spread opened at 34.5. It went down to 31.5. Now it's at 32.5. So there apparently is some money coming in on Wisconsin to make that line move. I would like to talk to those people that spent money on Wisconsin to not to be able to keep it within 34.5. I'd love to talk to those people and try and figure out what they're thinking. Because what have you seen the last 2 weeks against a top 10 scoring defense like Iowa and Ohio State to think that Wisconsin's offense is going to do anything more than it did in those games? And we don't know who the quarterback's going to be at this point either, right? We don't know. Hunter Simmons looked really dinged up on that hit that he took late in against Ohio State. Danny O'Neal would seemingly be the guy. But then you got Luke Fickell talking about this on Monday was asked about Carter Smith. And I can't imagine you throwing him into that Lions den on Saturday. I just can't imagine. Maybe you do it after the bye week when you have 4 games left and you can see what he's got against Washington and Indiana and Illinois and Minnesota. I'd be very surprised if they threw him out there into that, even though, again, can it be worse than what we've seen to this point? I think it probably is Danny O'Neil, and then and I just don't feel great about any opportunities to score on Saturday because you're going to be without Darian Dupree, probably going to be without a couple of wide receivers as well. We don't know what the offensive line is going to look like. Is Dylan Jones healthy enough to play? Like all these things, like it just gives you zero belief that not only are they going to score, but are they going to get across? Are they going to get into the red zone? Are they going to get what? A lot of things are going to have to go their way. And again, we're talking as if they're the worst team in college football, and that's not true. But they are one of the worst teams in the Power Four, and Oregon is one of the best teams in the country. And it just, I mean, they got the tie-dye jerseys coming out here too. Like, I don't even know how they're honoring the Grateful Dead with these jerseys. It just is all a recipe for another blowout. And thankfully, we don't have to go and dive into our fact books to look for the last time they got shut out 3 straight times, because it was 1968, which was the last time they got shut out 2 times in a row. So this is, excuse me,
1977.
Yeah, 77. But we knew about 1968 because that was the last time they lost. They got shut out in home games back to back. So those were, and then they went on the road, or then they had another game where they went on the road and lost as well by shutout. So we know that. So we don't have to go back into our fact books at all. That's, which is a positive. But this is just a huge, huge, like, you talk about mountain challenges. That's what Luke Fickell talked about, climbing the mountain. I mean, this is the biggest mountain in the world. And maybe right on the same plane as maybe Indiana will be the second biggest mountain. But I mean, this team lost to Indiana. So maybe this is the second biggest mountain, and Indiana will be the biggest mountain next month. I don't know. But there's a lot of things going against Wisconsin. Even if Wisconsin was good,
yes,
even if they were capable and were scoring like 25 a game, 26 a game, this is still a game that your success looks like would be trying to keep it close. And I think success looks like would be not getting shut out for a third straight game. I think that to me is what success looks like. And that is such a horrible way to think about this.
You hit on a point that I was thinking of and was going to bring up, is that even if Wisconsin was a good team in this moment, you would say, man, that is really tricky. You're going to need to play the best game you've played in a long time to give yourself a chance. And obviously Wisconsin hasn't been anywhere close. If you step back and look at this schedule, we knew October was going to be an absolute bear. And when the Big Ten released its schedule, Kerry Kenny, who's like in charge of some of the scheduling or communications, said at the time, they built these 2 bye weeks around October on purpose because it was essentially a mini season. We talked before the year, best case scenario, Wisconsin would be 4-4 at this stage. We felt like October, best case scenario, was 1-3 if you can beat Iowa. Again, that was best case. So it was always going to be tremendously challenging. I don't envy the Badgers' position. On the other hand, they've known this was coming the entire offseason. To come off the last 2 performances, but specifically number 1 Ohio State and then a game at Oregon, is so difficult. The problem is they're just so far away that there's no reason for optimism going into this game.
Yeah, they're beat up. So that was best case scenario. Is this worst case? I mean, obviously what happened if you were to lose the first 2 games, that probably would have been worst case. But I'm talking about in the last 5, in the last, I should say last 6 games, this is the worst case scenario where you have barely been competitive in 5 of those 6 games. The only one you were close to being competitive in was against Alabama.
This is absolutely worst case scenario. When Joel Klatt went on his show before the season and said, I don't know if Wisconsin wins 3 games, at the time it felt like, wow, that's a strong reaction. But I keep thinking, man, dude was right. And
I talked to him in Vegas about that. I asked him about it. I tried to get him to come on the podcast, but he's got apparently a bunch of deals that don't allow him to do that. But we were talking about it, and he's like, yeah, they'll win those first 2 games, and who else are they going to be favored against? Maryland? I'm like, yeah, that's probably it. And I'm like, I can see it. I can see it if it goes horribly, I can see it. And he was just like, yeah, I mean, I don't see. They don't have anybody. They don't have anybody that anybody's afraid of, and they have to play all these games back to back to back to back. And there is no reason that I see for them to have any chance of winning more than 3 games. So, and he's been proven correct.
Yes.
And, again, if we wanted to go in this and say Wisconsin was not going to have their starting quarterback for the entirety of the season outside of a few plays against Miami of Ohio and Maryland, I think a lot of us probably would have agreed with that 3-game thing. But
yeah,
it's not like we were predicting 9-3. I think I went 5-7. He went 6-6. It's not like we were predicting them to be so great, even if they had their quarterback. But if you would have said before the season they had a quarterback, I mean, 2-10, 3-9 probably would have been where you were at.
Yeah, I mean, when I said 6-6, obviously that was best case scenario, and what I said was, I guess it was a hot take on both sides. I said they wouldn't beat a single ranked team of the 6 that were ranked at the time, and that would drop Fickle to, what was it, 0-12, or I don't remember what it was. But then I also said I thought they would beat all these other. I thought they would beat the teams that they had been even with or close to. I thought something would be different, and obviously I was wrong. Mea culpa.
We all were.
Yeah, I mean, they were just so much worse. Now, yeah, if we knew the starting quarterback wasn't going to be there, I probably would have changed it. But even then, I wouldn't have said 2-10. So this is worst case scenario. And it's not just the losses. It's obviously the way this team is losing, because only one of these games has been close. During this 5-game losing streak, Wisconsin has been shut out at the half in 4 of these games, which means the game has been over. You could just go to a running clock, and that would probably help Wisconsin at this stage. And it's the totality of everything we've seen, because it's not unique to this 5-game stretch. They have lost 11 games since last season by at least 14 points, which means there's only one loss they've had, and it was the Oregon game a year ago. That was close. And I know the Penn State game was close for a while. Ultimately, the Nittany Lions won that game by 15 points. So if you want to include that, or even the USC game, because Wisconsin had a really good first half, but in the end, if I'm just looking at the final score, it hasn't been close. And so absolutely, this feels like worst case scenario. And it's hard for me to feel like it's going to get any better. I go back to the question I asked Luke on Monday about the offense. And it was a question about, from what we've seen, like what reason is there to believe that it's going to get any better here? And I give him credit at least for answering a question honestly by saying, like, essentially he said it's not. We know it's going to be a grind. We know it's going to be a challenge, and I wouldn't yeah, you need to generate explosive plays and you need to be able to run the ball, and you can say all that, but nothing we've seen indicates it's going to be different magically. So yeah, it's not a great spot.
Is there any game plan that keeps it close for you? I mean, obviously I know what the game plan is, but is there any hope of success of that game plan? And I'll say this, for me, Dylan Jones is banged up. Katie Akamelli's banged up. I'm sure Darian Dupree is not going to play. Why not give Gideon Atuka those carries? He is healthy. I mean, we saw him at the end of the Ohio State game. I know those were Ohio State's backups in there. I get that. But the dude runs hard, and he plays with some attitude. Let him have it. Let him have this game, because it's clear that Katie is not 100%. So to me, not the entirety of it. If Dylan Jones is healthy enough to play, he'll play. But and maybe you put Katie Akamelli in on third downs just to help with pass protection, or if you don't feel comfortable putting Gideon in that situation. But I'm not saying he's going to keep it close, but he's the healthiest of them, and he's the one. And his running style, I think, kind of fits what this team is right now, which is struggling to open up holes, but a guy who finishes through contact and is going to maybe drag some guys with him for a few more yards. And I think that running the ball, being able to hold on to the ball and not allow Oregon's offense on is the simple man's idea to keep this game close. But maybe Gideon Atuka gets a few more carries today or on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a time of possession game. The problem is Oregon can score so quickly that it may not matter. But if you want to give yourself a shot, the easiest thing to do is be able to move the chains. And it's not like I think Wisconsin is going to go out there and average 5.5 yards a carry, which is what Kansas averaged a year ago for the season when Jeff Grimes was the offensive coordinator. But I mean, the first down disparity against Ohio State was just depressing. Like you're not gonna have any chance you get 4 first downs, and I don't. But I also don't know what's realistic. I mean, they haven't really hit many explosive plays, so it's realistic to believe that that's suddenly going to happen. But can you? Luke did talk about this too. You can't put yourself in. You get a 2 yard gain on first down, and it's 2nd and 8, and you're just kind of against the chains the entire drive. Easy to say that, but can you put yourself in a 3rd and 2 situation or something manageable so you can have some options? Problem is, I don't know whether you can count on Wisconsin to get those 2 yards on 3rd down. Rather have that position than 3rd and 6 or something like that. So there's that. I would be worried about the quick strike nature of Oregon's offense. You know, Dante Moore has been tremendous this year. He's got 19 touchdown passes. There's only 3 quarterbacks in the country that have thrown more touchdown passes. So it can happen very quickly. And I think that's another challenge here in general is I know that Wisconsin, much like with Ohio State, talent versus talent, it's not the same level right now. But I also wonder about just the mentality of the entire group. And we talked about this after the Ohio State game. Individually, there are guys who are clearly putting in great effort, but collectively, when something goes awry, it seems like fall apart. And maybe that's not fair because there are so many other things happening here. You have bad luck. You have other teams that are just much better. But what happens when you fall behind early? Are you going to be able to hang in there and not get blown out? And I don't know that we've seen that ability other than Michigan.
I feel in that game, what did they do?
They scored on the first drive.
Yeah. So I think in Michigan, clearly, I mean, they're fine. They're a fine team. They're not some great. They're not on the level of Ohio State or Oregon or Indiana or Alabama for that matter. But when you look at the lack of explosive plays, the longest rush is by a wide receiver, Trechka Kahuna. The second longest rush this year is by Sean West.
Yeah, you got me wanting to look up the long scrimmage plays here and where Wisconsin ranks. By the way,
they have to be. They have to be last.
All right, why don't you take a guess? Let's see. We got here 10+ yard plays. There's 136 FBS teams. Where do you think Wisconsin ranks?
134.
129th. They have 67 10+ yard plays, and there's only one Power 4 team that's worse, which is North Carolina with 62.
I would still take North Carolina on a neutral field.
Would you?
They can. Well, I mean, they can score a little bit.
If you want to get into 20+ yard plays, Wisconsin is 135th out of 136.
That includes passing. So I was thinking rushing there.
Oh, I can find that too. But North Carolina has 12 and Wisconsin has 14. So I mean, this is like historically bad, obviously, for Wisconsin right now.
Yeah, when you look at, but like I'm talking like explosive running plays.
I got you. I got the answer to that too. They're 129th.
They're last. Are they not?
Well, it depends. So in 10+ yard plays, they're tied for 129th.
What about 20?
It's probably going to be pretty bad. Yes, they are tied for last. They have 2 runs of 20+, which is obviously the Trechka Kahuna run and then the Sean West one.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Again, I go back to the this is like this going back to big picture and why while the quarterback situation is certainly a problem and having to play backup is a problem, I was told going into this season that they went to this system because they would not have to count on the quarterback to be great. That if a quarterback got hurt, it was not the end of the world for the offense. So yeah, it sucks that Billy Edwards Jr. got hurt, but I was told all offseason that they went away from what they were doing in the past because it was too predicated on having a great quarterback. And they went to this system because if the situation that happened the last 2 years happened this year, it'd be fine. It would be fine, but it would not be catastrophic. And again, we don't know what it would have looked like with Billy Edwards Jr., but it's been catastrophic because the idea behind it was we'll run the ball. It's okay. We have the guys to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. And they just haven't had the guys to be able to run the ball down people's throats, despite the idea behind it. Like that was the goal. You'd be able to ride your running game even when your quarterback isn't good. It's what Wisconsin's done for so long. And they just have not had any success running the ball on a consistent basis. They got one drive that I can think of the entire year where they just ran the ball down the other team's throat and put it in the end zone. That was against Michigan. Otherwise, it just has not happened.
Their rushing offense is on pace to be the worst at Wisconsin since I think Barry Alvarez's second season. Now that's yards per game, but I mean, all these stats, you could pick anything and you're going to find Wisconsin ranking near the bottom in the country.
So many insult stats to go around, for sure.
But you are what your record says you are, and these stats are not a small sample size. We are, what are we, 6 games into the season? It feels like 11, 7 games into the season. 7 games right there, 2 and 5. This is what Wisconsin is. I know.
Kidding, of course. But I've never seen like ESPN's like predictor thing. And they're like their game preview. They give Oregon a 97.2% chance to win this game.
2.8%. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yes, I've never seen it that lopsided against Wisconsin before. So I don't know. We've spent a lot of time talking about the ills of this year's team. Let's switch it up here and talk a little bit about the ills of the program overall. Because I feel like it is not just this year's team that people are upset about. They're not just upset about this Oregon game or upset about the last few games. It's about what they've seen, what they believe they've seen happen here in the last few years. And really, let's be fair, things were trending downwards even in the last. I know that they won 9 games in 2021. I get that, but things were trending down in 2022 for sure. And so that's where it started. Who knows if they would have been? I highly doubt that they would have been able to pull it back. That Paul Chryst would have been able to pull it back like they did in 21, even if he had still been there. But 3 years into the Luke Fickell era, there are quite a few people that are done with it. And it sounded like a few, or it sounded at least one was done with it among the alumni of those Rose Bowl teams.
Yeah, so I had a chance to catch up with a few of those guys. Obviously, the weekend was, for them, a celebration of those 3 Rose Bowl winning teams. And so I talked to Vitaly Pisetsky, Matt Davenport, a couple kickers. They were at the same table. Mike Eccles, who's a 4-year starting cornerback for the Badgers and 4th-round NFL draft pick. And then Brooks Bollinger, who was the honorary captain for the Ohio State game. And all of those guys were part of the tail end of that Rose Bowl era, obviously. So no one from the 93 season. But I would also say not everybody wanted to talk, which I understand. They're in a bad position. If I want to come to them and say, tell me how you feel right now, what are they going to say that's positive? But Vitaly, I mean, he laid it out there. He gave his thoughts, and he's always been outspoken. And I think it's like with all of these guys, it's coming from a place of love and passion for this program, which changed all of their lives. There's a reason they're coming back here 25 or 30 years later to celebrate something so special to them. It's because they want success. Like Vitaly's got a 14-year-old son. His oldest was with him, and he was wearing a Pisetsky jersey, and he said he's brainwashed. He's going to be a student here. So that's the place where he's coming from. But he said, Luke Fickell's got to go. He said, it's just not working. You can't get blown out against Maryland and then come back and get shut out against a big rival. And what he said is, I'll speak for myself, but I'm thinking, and this is before the game, so this is like 2 hours before kickoff. He said, is there going to be anybody in the stands by the time we get recognized at halftime? And it was a fair point, because at halftime, you took a picture of it when everybody was out there. Not particularly full. And Ohio State led 17-0 at the time. The game was basically over. Now he, again, one of the more outspoken people who's willing to put that out there. I think other guys were more diplomatic, but Matt Davenport said the same thing that Vitaly did, which is when we played, and I know it's the not old man get off my lawn, but like obviously what Wisconsin did back then is what people remember the Badgers for. He's like, if we played a team that was better than us or had more talent, they were going to be bruised and they were going to walk off that field with a level of respect. And maybe that didn't happen in every single game, but the vast majority of the time, certainly. And he said, I look at this now and like, is that the case? And Vitali said the same thing. Are we respected? He said, I don't even know anymore. So alums are tremendously frustrated by this. You know, other people like Mike Eccles was talking about how I think he took a more diplomatic approach. You know, there are some things that he felt hadn't gone the coaching staff's way with the injuries to the quarterbacks. And he talked about how much college football has changed from when they were there. And that's a fair point, though obviously all these other programs are figuring out a way to deal with it, that you could develop these guys over time and they could build relationships. And if you had a bad year, a couple years later, everyone was still together. And now there are so many new players on the roster, and that's a challenge. But ultimately, there's just a bunch of frustration. And I think it's interesting talking to those 98 and 99 guys because they were teammates with Chris McIntosh. And I think that perhaps complicates some of the feelings here. And I asked Vitali about it. He said, like, we are max guys. But at the same time, he took a big swing and he missed, and it's just not working. And so certainly the Ohio State game didn't help in that viewpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked about the 98, 99 teams and the 93 team. I've seen some posts on LinkedIn of all places where they are talking about the weekend. And, you know, Yusuf Burgess, who was a linebacker on that team, you know, there was a message of culture. And I think it's more of he was trying to turn it into a work thing. But if you don't continually hammer away at building a strong culture, and there are certain aspects of it that are needed, things that are really put together well will fall apart. And that's essentially what I think a lot of those guys believe has happened. That there is not that there's no culture, but there's no like stabilizing force to be able to lean back on when things aren't going well, because what can you do well at this point? What is there out there that, gosh, the passing game's not working. We can't keep the quarterback upright. Run defense is getting gashed, like whatever it is. Do you have anything that you can lean back on and count on? And those teams had that nastiness and that strength to just pound on guys, right? And you may not be able to run the ball every game, but you're going to try, and you are going to try and knock it down there and push it down their throats. And they are going to feel it afterwards. And that was also Big Ten football in the 90s, if we're being fair. It was not the basketball on grass, which is certainly more of what it became and what it is now than it was back then. But that said, there are still teams that are power run teams. Ohio State's a spread power. Like they want to run the ball down your throat. They haven't been able to do it this year. But that's what they want to be. Michigan, very similar. Wisconsin wants to be that, and they're not that. And they don't have anything right now that they can lean back on and count on to be good in a single game. They just don't. And if you don't have that, then it's very, very difficult to have guys buy in. And second of all, when things go wrong, to keep the faith. And you know, Luke Fickell has hammered home that he doesn't see any quit in this guy's eyes. And I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying that the play on the field would suggest when things go bad, they go really bad, and they don't necessarily recover.
Yeah, what you're saying is part of the message that I heard from talking to these alums. And it goes back to some terms we've certainly heard for a long time, but they're asking, what is our identity as a program? And when Barry was here, you had a foundation of some of those things, but you had to figure out what you did well and build from there. And as we've said, it's hard to see where Wisconsin is better really in any area from a couple of years ago. And when something doesn't go well, there's not something you can hang your hat on. And those are all tremendously problematic and such a stark contrast to what all these guys helped build. And that's also part of the frustration too, is all of these players were part of something that helped turn around the program and create this legacy. And this legacy continued because Wisconsin had a lot of the same staples that those 90s teams were built on. And it feels like so much of that has faded away or crumbled or evaporated. And I think these guys are looking at it feeling like what we built is gone. And is it coming back? Or how will it come back?
Again, this isn't easy. However, I will say, I think finding a way back is easier than it was in the 1990s. Like when I hear what the guys walked into when Barry Alvarez got here in 1990 and what they had to do to get things turned around and to change the culture of the program and all that stuff. And it was not easy. Like you didn't have the athletic department back then. People take shots at it now with how it doesn't have the money, doesn't have this. That department was in the red when Pat Richter showed up as the athletic director, and they had to make some cuts that people are still upset about to today, specifically the baseball team. But trying to turn a team around back then compared to trying to turn a program around now, I think is significantly different because there are ways to energize it very, very quickly in a way that we've seen done at Indiana. And I'm not saying that's going to happen every place, but there are examples of it happening and happening quickly. And so that's where I think if you're a Wisconsin fan, you have to at least hold out hope that is what's possible, that this is not going to be a situation like if you have another down year this year or they hold on to Luke Fickell and Chris McIntosh next year, it's another tough year, that it can't be turned around quickly. It's not going to be I don't think it's going to be like a 7 or 10 year thing. Like you're going to be horrible for that long because of these last few years. But what I will say has happened is yes, the culture that had been built here is, and the things that you could count on as a team and as a program are not, you can't count on them right now. And that's extremely tough. And you would think that it would have to be somebody that knew that culture that would have to bring it back. But again, that's down the road. Right now, these guys are upset and pissed off about what's happened to what they built. And it's been 20 years, 25 years since most of them have been here. And yet they still take pride in what this program is. And right now it's not. It's tough to take pride in what it is right now.
What you're saying is one of the things that Brooke Bollinger mentioned in the story that I wrote, which is, for better or worse, the way college football is now is so much different that things can turn so quickly. It can happen in the matter of 1 year. Now, sometimes that requires staff changes, but also the personnel changes that are available to you now that weren't before. You obviously still recruit players, but if you hit on the right portal guys, if you're able to spend the amount of money necessary, if those guys can stay healthy, and I realize that's a lot of ifs, but it is possible. So things can turn very quickly as they did at Wisconsin and have over the past few years, but they can also go in your favor. But it's all about hope right now and trying to find some optimism. And we'll see what the future holds for Wisconsin.
Did anybody have any comments about their former teammate?
About McIntosh? Just Vitaly basically saying, like, I said, like, do you guys talk amongst yourselves? And he said, we're all sort of perplexed about what we're seeing. But as it relates specifically to McIntosh, he said, we love Mac. We are Mac's guys. But Vitaly is also trying to view it through the prism of the on-field product. And so it's what I said before, that he feels like McIntosh took a big swing and that it isn't working. So that's the extent of what I heard on that front.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Right, moving on. Let's get into our picks here for the week. And as I said at the top of the show, we're just separated by a game now. Jesse had a tough week. It was 2-5. I went 4-3. I'm now 25-31 on the season. Jesse is 26-30 on the season. And we still got we got 5 weeks left here. A lot can happen. Some good games on the schedule this week, Jesse. Number 15, Missouri, on the road at number 10, Vanderbilt. Vandy went, I think, 148 games without being favored against a top 25 opponent. They are now favored for a second straight week, and this one they are favored by 2.5 over Missouri.
Give me Vanderbilt. I learned my lesson a week ago or 2 weeks ago. whenever
It was
I
last week. Yeah, last week
yeah.
against LS. No, who was it? It was LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they took him care of. They took care of him.
if I do something wrong the next week, I try to correct it the following week. Unfortunately, sometimes I get it wrong both times.
Yeah, I think this is an easy one, right? The way Vanderbilt's playing, the way that it just feels different. This whole idea behind Diego Pavia, but also Clark Lee, and some of the investment that they've put into that program, and it feels different. It's not an easy place to play anymore. Nick Saban. That was a really good crowd last week, and I would expect another really good crowd this week. My favorite crowds are teams that have been so bad for so long. All of a sudden, you get to experience your team being good for the first time, and so many people at Vanderbilt are experiencing that, and it obviously drives me back to the early 90s where Wisconsin all of a sudden started getting really, really good, and the fan base is energized, and it's how 70,000 end up at a Rose Bowl from Wisconsin at UCLA's home field. Like that type of excitement around a program, I love that. And I'm taking Vanderbilt as well. This is another big one. Texas A&M on the road at number 20 LSU. The Aggies favored by 2.5. A note before you pick: it is a night game in Death Valley.
I'll still pick Texas A&M.
I like Texas A&M, but I also like LSU, and Brian Kelly's fighting for his job. If they were to lose this one, do they fall out? They're going to fall out of the top 25, and at some point, maybe Brian Kelly's in trouble. At home, I'm going to take LSU. Ole Miss, the 8th-ranked team in the country, on the road at Oklahoma, who's ranked 13th. They are 5.5-point favorites at home. Ole Miss, obviously, losing a week ago at Alabama.
I was surprised by the way Oklahoma played against Texas. It was sort of a vindication moment for Arch Manning, who had been absolutely trashed in the media leading up to that. Not that he had played very well, but I suppose even though both teams are reeling a bit, I'm inclined to go with Ole Miss in the points.
Well, shoot, I thought you were going to go Oklahoma there. Yeah, that's a tough one. Excuse me, Ole Miss was at Georgia last week. I apologize. That's my bad. It was Tennessee that was at Alabama. Give me Oklahoma. What? You okay?
Just breathing.
All right. Minnesota on the road at Iowa. The Hawkeyes 8.5-point favorites. Minnesota coming off an upset, obviously, of Nebraska at home. They stormed the field.
8.5 feels like so many points. I think I was going to win, but I'm just going to think this will be a old-fashioned Big Ten slugfest. That's a one-possession game. So I will take Minnesota with the points.
8.5's a lot. Iowa and Minnesota have gone back and forth, but I'm going to take Iowa at home. 8.5, coming off a win over Penn State. Quarterback ran for like 130 yards. He's getting healthy. That's a problem. Illinois, ranked 23rd in the country, on the road. They are underdogs at Washington by 4.5.
I'm going to go with Washington in this one. I just don't know how much I can trust Illinois despite being a top 25 team. And I like Washington at home. And boy, that matchup after the bye week against Washington for Wisconsin is looking tougher and tougher, I feel like.
Washington was rolling there for a minute and then went into the big house last week and got outclassed by Michigan. But at home,
the only team.
It happens to everybody, right? If your name is Wisconsin or Washington. Well, I will say I'm going to take Washington at home as well. That's a good. Yeah, I'm going to take Washington at home. UCLA on the road at Indiana, number 2 Indiana, and they are 26.5-point favorites. The number's big. The reason I put it on here, obviously, is because UCLA's won 3 straight since that 0-4 start. But Indiana has been a monster pretty much every year, every week, and that's a big number though.
UCLA nowhere near as bad as I thought the Bruins were going to be. On the other hand, Indiana is just an absolute juggernaut right now. So I'm going to pick the Hoosiers to cover.
Who does Indiana have next week? Who do they get next week?
Who's going to wear them down?
They are at Maryland.
Wisconsin.
No, they are at Maryland. I will take. Is Nico healthy? I thought he got nicked up in that game.
Don't know.
Last week. I'll take Indiana as well. And Wisconsin at Oregon. I put 31.5. It's now 32.5. I don't know if that changes your pick at all. It doesn't for me.
No, it doesn't for me. Oregon 42, Wisconsin 3.
Look at you pulling a Zach right there. I will just giving them a courtesy 3. They will get no courtesy 3 from me until they can find a way to put a point on the scoreboard. They get 0. So I'm going 48-0. I know that isn't very kind, but they've been pretty unkind to the eyes here of late. So this is kind of like you got to prove it to us. Like we said all off season, got to prove it to us. Well, I'm now on the motive. You got to prove it to us. You got to actually be able to score a point before I'm going to give you anything in a prediction. So 48-0. You went 42-3. Both of us have Oregon covering, and we'll see what that looks like on Saturday out in Eugene. Saturday night game. Saturday afternoon, I guess, out there. All right. We'll be back, talk about the game, look ahead to the bye week, which everyone needs. All right. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right. There is Jesse Temple from Badger Connect. You've been listening to The Camp.